I know for a fact that there's a lot of you out there that need to hear these tips. In this video, we are going to go over 10 of the worst habits that are holding people back in the spray meta. It took me a little while to get used to the spray meta, and I'm sure a lot of you are still adapting. The tips I give in this video are going to be 10 of the biggest things you need to change. Before we hop into it, please consider using code JivanTV in the Fortnite item shop, hitting that like button, subbing if you're new, and without further ado, let's get into this video. Just an FYI, there's going to be tips for beginners and advanced players in here, so if one tip is too easy for you, just keep in mind there's timestamps down below and you can skip ahead. Tip number 1 is remembering to double layer anytime you reset a wall, or anytime you're getting sprayed at in general. Something I see a ton of players do, even players that are good at competitive, they'll forget to double layer a wall as soon as they reset it. Even if you think you're absolutely free from that angle, you need to double layer it. So for example, I'm on top of a cone and I'm peeking out this wall here. Once I reset that wall, I also am going to flip up my cone and hold for just like 1 or 2 seconds to make sure I don't get fried. If you let that wall get sprayed at one time after you reset it, you could be down 100 health just because you didn't take the precaution of double layering. And then anytime you're running from somebody and trying to heal, always make sure you double layer, because let's say you get all of this distance and they're following you. If you just double layer it, it could give you that extra 2 seconds that you need to pop a mini. Double layer anytime you think there's even a chance that you're gonna get shot at. Easy. Tip number 2, avoid letting enemies walk or spray into your face while piece controlling. This is one of the hardest things in the spray meta, and I know for a fact a lot of you are struggling with it. Heck bro, even I struggle with it still. So basically the difference of piece controlling in this season is that you gotta learn to identify when the opponent is going for a spray play. Anytime you're piece controlling them and you see them with their SMG out kind of close to the wall that you're up against, they are always going to try to spray into your box. So the difference in piece controlling is identifying those situations where they're going to spray in your box and then back up as soon as you see them start to do that. Let's take a look at a few examples. In this first one, I messed up. Obviously, I let the guy get in my face with an SMG, but how could I have avoided that? In this situation, it was on awkward ground. You don't want to put yourself in a weird place like that, so just staying up would have been the solution. Now, this here is an example of trying to do piece control a little bit too close to a wall. You'll see here that I win this fight because I had really good aim and I used protective piece control. But if I would have hit a cheap pump shot there, this guy could have beat me. So what should I have done differently? Right here, I predicted that he was going to run into that box where I have the cone. So I should have just set up a peek shot from far away here. That way, if he runs into my box, I can just flip up the cone and I'll be fine. The main point that you should be taking away from this is during a fight, always keep in mind that the enemy could spray into your box at any point in time. But if we look at this situation, the enemy is at the way back of the box when I'm doing the piece control. Initially, I reset my floor here just in case that they were going to take a shot. But in that time, I saw they were in the back of the box, so then I set up a right-hand peek, get the health advantage, and then finish the fight pretty easily from there. I always try to take that extra precaution, resetting walls when I think they're going to take a shot, or backing up when I think they're going to spray into my box. I take those precautions, and that's how I win fights more consistently. This last example here is just a perfect example on how piece control can still be used perfectly safely. When you set up a peek from above like that, they literally have no chance to jump in your box with an SMG. You see what I'm saying? Anyways, hopefully you guys get the point from that. I'm going to try to have more fighting tutorials out soon, so stay on the lookout. Tip number 3 is going to see like common sense, and sometimes you can't avoid it. Boxing up in wood when other players are around is always going to lead to you getting sprayed. This is especially important in tournaments. And now here's some key things to note. You never want to box up in wood anytime before the moving zone. If you do that, you are going to get focused. There is no doubt about it. But in the moving zone, obviously you're going to be burning through a lot of mats and you might eventually only have wood in your inventory. So if that's the case, you need to make sure that you drop down to low ground. If you're on a mid ground layer or a high ground layer and you're building in wood, you're going to get sprayed at by high ground or the players around you on mid ground. So once you get down to wood, go down to low ground and start looking for a play on somebody so that you can get hard mats. That's the best way to handle that situation. Tip number 4 is something that's been affecting me a little bit this season. I'm kind of upset about it. The Martaz peek is no longer useful unless if you're using it from a distance. Anytime there's a player a layer above you and you just have a floor in between you and them, they're going to try to spray through that floor. So I used to try to do this Martaz peek, where you jump through the floor to take the peek shot. But anytime you do that now, they're just going to spray through that floor, so it's no longer useful unless if they're like a box away. This is another one of those examples where you can't give the enemy an opportunity to spray into your box. Tip number 5 is you gotta be so careful when using your launch pads. You can't really use them to run away from fights anymore unless if you low pad. If you launch straight up into the air, the enemy is always going to be able to shoot you out of the sky. So keep that in mind. If you get weak, do not launch up, launch downwards or low pad it. Additionally, in late game, you need to make sure that when you're high padding, you're trying to break line of sight with other players so that you don't get sprayed to death. If you just high pad straight up and try to launch pad to zone, you're going to get fried. But if you launch pad and you use a tree as cover from the high ground team, they're not going to be able to shoot you, so that's the smart way to do it. Tip number 6 is something I learned from my boy Ken Beans, and it is such facts. You cannot take a bloom fight in this season if the enemy is taking shots first. Like, let's say they're shooting your wall and you try to spray back at them to fry them back. It's just not as viable as it used to be. So anytime the enemy's shooting, just wait for them to stop shooting. Just keep holding your walls, and then once they're done shooting, that's when you can make a play back at them. Tip number 7 is do not take a 50-50 if you do not have a health advantage. If you're able to get a completely sneaky SMG spray into their box, that can be a good option, but for the most part, you're going to want to try to get a pump shot and then go in with your SMG. You'll win every single fight this season if you can get a health advantage with the shotguns and then go for a spray play into their box. It's going to work every time. Tip number 8 is spraying/walking at a wall. I can't tell you how many times I've been in arena and players are just full on spraying against my wall as if their life depends on it, and bro, it never works. I think a lot of players out there think that SMGs are so broken that you can just walk up against somebody's build, spray at them until you get in their box, and then switch to your other SMG and spray that one. It's not gonna work. You gotta find ways to sneakily spray into somebody's box. Like, if they're healing and they don't know you're against their wall, then going for a spray play might work. But if you just randomly run at them with an SMG, hoping that you get in their box, it's going to lead to your death every time. If someone tries to do this to you, just literally hold the wall until they run out of ammo and then shoot them. Like, it's pretty easy. Tip number 9 is boxing up to heal. A lot of people say it's like impossible to get away and actually get heals off this season, and it definitely is harder. But if you tunnel in a way where you juke out the enemy and you're double layering your walls when you start to pop those heals, you should be able to get a lot of heals off. So 2 examples for you. The first one is in creative. This is just basically how I go about escaping from an enemy and getting heals off. Let's say he's pushing the wall in front of me. I flip the cone up, edit out the back, and then maybe I double edit down. I'm always placing ramps behind me, but I also try to juke the opponents. Like, I made that box and then I turn around and go down the other way and make another box out that side. And before I try to pop heals, I'll always double layer it. Just like kind of an example to give you an idea, but here's an example from me in duos. Rhodey went down and I was running away from 2 players. I did my best to stay on the move the entire fight. That way they had so much trouble keeping track of me, and eventually I was able to get them split just for a split second to give me a shot on them.
You might just have to bop one.
What the? So that's how I got one player knocked, but while I was pushing the second player, he edited out on me and placed a ramp over me. This is a great way to counter that if you're not trying to take a 50-50. Literally just edit a corner of your floor and place a ramp over top of you. That way they'd have to spray through a floor and a ramp if they want to get in your face, and they'll be almost out of SMG ammo at that point, so then you can just turn around and bop them. Hopefully that helps you guys out. I know a lot of people have been struggling with getting away. Just practice switching layers and double layering behind you. Tip number 10 is kind of away from the spray meta, but do not try to take a right-hand peek on somebody holding a heavy shotgun at you. If they're just flat out aiming a heavy shotgun at you, they're going to be able to pre-fire your right-hand peek so well, and you're just going to lose the fight because that thing smacks. If they hit a headshot on you while you take like a window right-hand peek, which they'll do every single time, your game is going to be over. So make sure you're paying attention to what gun they have out. If they have an SMG out when they're up against your wall, they're going to go for a spray play into your box. If they have a heavy shotgun out when you're going for a right-hand peek, they're going to try to pre-fire your right-hand peek. This game is really complicated, you know, it takes so much awareness, but if you can somehow apply all of these tips and master them, you're going to be much better off in the spray meta. Once you get used to it, I swear this season is not too bad. I personally love it a lot. They might switch it up next season, but either way, we're going to be ready for it here in the Jivan gang. Let's go. Hope this video helped you guys out. If it did, be sure to hit that like button, sub if you're new. Use code JivanTV, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.